The 1970s were a decade when popular music began pushing boundaries more openly than ever before. Lyrics became bolder, themes grew darker, and artists were increasingly willing to test how far mainstream audiences and radio stations were willing to go. For broadcasters, that sometimes created a dilemma. Certain songs were simply too provocative, too political, or too controversial for comfortable daytime airplay. Some stations refused to play them entirely, while others limited them to late-night rotations. Yet despite those hesitations, a number of these recordings achieved enormous global success. Here are 10 songs that radio stations were once afraid to play, yet went on to become worldwide hits. Number 10. Let's Spend the Night Together, The Rolling Stones, 1967.
Let's spend the night together now.
When Let's Spend the Night Together was released in 1967, it immediately stirred controversy on both sides of the Atlantic. Written by Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, the song carried a directness that many radio programmers of the era found difficult to accept. Its title alone suggested a level of sexual openness that was still considered daring for mainstream pop music. At the time, popular songs often hinted at romance in more subtle terms. The Stones, however, chose a far more straightforward approach. Musically, the track was energetic and confident, driven by pounding piano chords and the band's unmistakable swagger. Yet it was the lyrical implication, an invitation to spend the night together, that quickly made it a lightning rod for controversy. Some radio stations refused to play the song entirely, fearing complaints from listeners who viewed the lyrics as inappropriate. The tension became especially visible when the band performed the song on The Ed Sullivan Show. Producers insisted that Jagger alter the lyric to the safer phrase, "Let's spend some time together." During the performance, Jagger famously rolled his eyes while singing the revised line, making it clear that the compromise had not come willingly. Despite the resistance from broadcasters, the single still climbed the charts internationally.
Let's spend the night together.
Listeners embraced its rebellious energy, and over time the song became one of the defining moments in the band's catalog. In hindsight, the controversy surrounding Let's Spend the Night Together reflects a turning point in popular music. The boundaries of what could be sung openly in a pop song were beginning to shift, and artists like the Rolling Stones were more than willing to push them. Number 9. The Pill, Loretta Lynn, 1975.
But all I've seen of this old world is a bed and a dog.
By the mid-1970s, country music was no stranger to controversy. Yet even within a genre known for its storytelling and honesty, The Pill pushed into territory that many radio stations found difficult to accept. Released in 1975, the song addressed a subject rarely discussed openly in mainstream music at the time: birth control.
All these years I've stayed at home while you had...
Written by Lorene Allen, Don McCann, and T.D. Bayless, the song was delivered with unmistakable confidence by Loretta Lynn, whose career had already been built on songs that spoke frankly about women's lives. The lyrics told the story of a woman who, after years of raising children and living within the expectations of traditional marriage, finally finds freedom through the arrival of the birth control pill.
Every year that's gone by, another baby...
For many listeners, the song felt refreshingly honest. For radio programmers, particularly those working in conservative country markets, it was something else entirely. Several stations refused to play the song, concerned that its subject matter was too controversial for daytime airplay. Discussions of reproductive autonomy were still considered deeply sensitive in 1975, and Lynn's bold approach unsettled some gatekeepers within the country music establishment. Yet the controversy only seemed to amplify the song's visibility.
I'm tearing down your brooder house, 'cause now I've got...
Despite the bans, The Pill climbed the Billboard country charts, eventually reaching the top 10 and becoming one of the most talked-about recordings of Lynn's career. More importantly, the song reinforced Lynn's reputation as one of country music's most fearless storytellers. Throughout her career, she had addressed topics that others avoided, from divorce to double standards. And The Pill continued that tradition.
You set this chicken your last time, 'cause now I...
Looking back, the song now feels like a snapshot of a changing society. What once caused discomfort on radio airwaves ultimately became part of a broader conversation about women's independence. and another example of how controversial songs often find their audience regardless of resistance. Number 8. Walk on the Wild Side, Lou Reed, 1972. When Walk on the Wild Side was released in 1972, it carried a subject matter that mainstream radio had rarely confronted so directly. Written by Lou Reed and produced by David Bowie alongside Mick Ronson, the song offered a series of character sketches inspired by figures from the New York underground art scene surrounding Andy Warhol. Each verse introduced a different personality from Warhol's circle, individuals who existed far outside the boundaries of conventional pop storytelling. Reed's lyrics referenced themes rarely heard on commercial radio at the time: gender identity, sex work, drug culture, and life within the countercultural fringes of New York City. Yet the way the story was delivered made it strangely hypnotic. The arrangement was remarkably understated. A smooth bass line, gentle acoustic guitar, and soft backing vocals created a relaxed atmosphere that contrasted sharply with the provocative nature of the lyrics. Perhaps the most surprising element was how the song slipped past many radio gatekeepers. Some stations avoided it entirely once they understood the references, but others continued playing it, either unaware of the lyrical details or willing to overlook them because of the song's laid-back sound. Against expectations, the track climbed the Billboard Hot 100, eventually reaching the top 20 and becoming Reed's most recognizable solo recording. In retrospect, Walk on the Wild Side revealed something important about the changing cultural landscape of the early 1970s. Audiences were becoming more open to stories that reflected the complexities of modern urban life, even when those stories came from the fringes of society. Number 7. Lola, The Kinks, 1970. When Lola appeared in 1970, it quickly became one of the most memorable and quietly controversial songs of the era. Written by Ray Davies, the song told a deceptively simple story. A young man meets an intriguing woman in a London nightclub and spends the evening dancing and talking with her. Only gradually does the narrative reveal something unexpected.
She walked up to me and she asked me to dance.
The character Lola, as the lyrics suggest, may not be exactly who the narrator initially believes her to be. At a time when gender identity and sexuality were rarely discussed openly in mainstream pop music, the subject matter placed the song in uncomfortable territory for some radio programmers. The story was playful and humorous rather than confrontational, but its implications were unmistakable. Even beyond the lyrical content, the single encountered another obstacle. Because the original recording mentioned a specific brand of soda, Coca-Cola, the BBC initially refused to play the song due to strict rules against commercial references in broadcast music. Davies ultimately re-recorded the line, replacing Coca-Cola with Cherry Cola, allowing the song to receive radio airplay. Once released, however, listeners quickly embraced it. Lola climbed the Billboard Hot 100, eventually reaching the top 10 in the United States while also becoming a major hit in the United Kingdom. Musically, the song's gentle acoustic opening and sing-along chorus made it feel deceptively cheerful. That contrast between its warm melody and its quietly subversive narrative became part of its enduring appeal. In hindsight, Lola marked a subtle but significant moment in pop songwriting. It showed that mainstream audiences were willing to engage with more complicated social themes, sometimes even when radio stations weren't entirely comfortable with them. Number 6. God Save the Queen, Sex Pistols, 1977. If any song on this list openly challenged the establishment, it was God Save the Queen. Released in 1977 during the Silver Jubilee of Queen Elizabeth II, the single arrived at the exact moment Britain was celebrating the monarchy. And then Johnny Rotten stepped to the microphone and sang the words, "God save the Queen!" God Save the Queen, the fascist regime. For the British establishment, it was nothing short of cultural sabotage. The song was written by John Lydon and Steve Jones, capturing the frustration and anger felt by many young people in 1970s Britain, an era marked by unemployment, economic uncertainty, and social tension. Instead of polite protest, the band delivered their message through the explosive sound of punk. The reaction from institutions was immediate. The BBC banned the song from radio and television. Major retailers refused to stock the single. Several radio stations simply pretended it didn't exist, yet none of that stopped the momentum. Despite the bans, the record sold rapidly across the United Kingdom and surged up the charts. Many observers still believe it actually reached #1, but was kept from the official top spot to avoid embarrassment during the Jubilee celebrations. Ironically, the controversy only amplified its impact. God Save the Queen became one of the defining anthems of the punk rock movement, loud, confrontational, and unapologetically rebellious. More importantly, it demonstrated something the music industry rarely expects. Suppressing a song can sometimes make it louder. What radio refused to play, audiences made impossible to ignore. Number 5. Love to Love You Baby. Donna Summer, 1975. In 1975, a disco track arrived that made radio programmers deeply uncomfortable and audiences completely fascinated. Love to Love You Baby, recorded by Donna Summer and produced by Giorgio Moroder, wasn't just a song, it was an atmosphere. The track unfolded slowly over a hypnotic disco groove, built around pulsing bass lines, lush synthesizers, and Summer's breathy, intimate vocal performance. But what truly shocked listeners was the mood of the recording. Summer's voice drifted between melody and whispered expression, creating an undeniably sensual atmosphere that pushed the boundaries of what mainstream radio usually allowed. Some stations refused to play the full version entirely. The original album cut ran over 16 minutes, filled with extended instrumental passages and repeated vocal sections that many critics described as overtly erotic. Radio edits were quickly created to shorten the track to a more conventional single length. Even then, controversy followed it everywhere. For conservative broadcasters, the song felt too provocative for daytime airplay. But on dance floors, the reaction was the opposite. Clubs embraced the record immediately. Driven by Moroder's innovative electronic production, the track helped define the emerging sound of disco, transforming nightclubs into laboratories for a new kind of pop music built around rhythm and atmosphere. Despite the hesitation from radio programmers, the song climbed the Billboard Hot 100, eventually reaching the top 5 and establishing Donna Summer as one of the most important voices of the disco era. Looking back, Love to Love You Baby represented more than just controversy. It marked a turning point where dance music, sexuality, and pop culture collided, proving that even the songs radio feared could still become global phenomena. Number 4. Brown Sugar, The Rolling Stones, 1971. Few rock songs in the early 1970s arrived with as much swagger or as much controversy as Brown Sugar. Written by Mick Jagger and recorded with the unmistakable guitar riff of Keith Richards, the track opened the Stones' 1971 album Sticky Fingers with explosive energy. From the first seconds, it sounded unstoppable. The riff was infectious. The groove was relentless. The performance felt raw and urgent, exactly the kind of rock song radio loved to play. But the lyrics were another story. Brown Sugar referenced themes of slavery, interracial relationships, and exploitation with a bluntness that made many broadcasters uneasy. Jagger delivered the words with his usual swagger, but behind the groove was a narrative that critics later described as deeply provocative. Even in the early 1970s, an era known for pushing boundaries, the subject matter raised eyebrows. Some radio stations avoided the song entirely. Others played it, but edited or ignored the lyrics. Yet the musical power of the recording proved difficult to resist. The single surged up the Billboard Hot 100, eventually reaching number 1 in the United States, becoming one of the Stones' biggest hits. Ironically, the controversy surrounding the song never truly disappeared. Decades later, the band themselves acknowledged how complicated the lyrics had become in modern cultural discussions. In fact, during recent tours, the group has occasionally left the song out of their set lists entirely, but in 1971, none of that slowed the record's momentum. Brown Sugar was loud, dangerous, and impossible to ignore. Exactly the kind of rock song that could make radio nervous while audiences turned the volume even higher. Number 3, Relax, Frankie Goes to Hollywood, 1983.
When you wanna go to it, relax, don't do it.
When Relax first appeared in 1983, it didn't sound like the beginning of a global scandal. At first, it was simply another ambitious, synth-driven single produced by Trevor Horn, one of the most influential producers of the decade. The track pulsed with booming drums, sleek synthesizers, and a massive chorus built for the dance floor. But then people started paying attention to the lyrics.
When you wanna suck it, do it, relax, don't do it.
Frontman Holly Johnson delivered lines that were unmistakably provocative, filled with bold sexual imagery that many broadcasters considered too explicit for mainstream radio. Initially, the song received modest airplay. Then something unusual happened. In January 1984, a DJ on BBC Radio 1 abruptly stopped the record mid-broadcast after realizing what the lyrics implied. Soon afterward, the BBC officially banned the single from radio and television. Normally, that kind of ban would kill a record instantly.
Relax, don't do it. When you wanna go to it.
Instead, it created one of the biggest hits of the decade. Curiosity exploded. Listeners rushed to record stores simply to hear the song everyone was suddenly talking about. Within weeks, Relax surged up the charts, eventually reaching number 1 in the UK and staying there for 5 consecutive weeks. It would go on to sell millions of copies worldwide. Ironically, the controversy helped cement the song's reputation as a defining moment of 1980s pop culture. Relax wasn't just a hit single. It became a symbol of how censorship could sometimes backfire spectacularly. The more radio tried to silence it, the louder the public wanted to hear it. Number 2, War, Edwin Starr, 1970. Few protest songs in pop history were as direct, or as impossible to ignore, as War. Released in 1970 at the height of the Vietnam War, the track carried a message that left absolutely no room for ambiguity. From the opening line, Edwin Starr delivered one of the most unforgettable questions ever recorded in soul music. War. What is it good for? And then the answer arrived like a hammer. Absolutely nothing. The song had originally been recorded by The Temptations, but Motown hesitated to release that version as a single. Berry Gordy and the label executives worried that the openly anti-war message could provoke backlash, particularly in a country already deeply divided over Vietnam. Instead, they gave the song to Edwin Starr, whose explosive vocal delivery transformed it into something far more confrontational.
Say it again.
Starr didn't sing the lyrics politely. He shouted them. Backed by pounding drums, urgent horns, and a relentless rhythm section, the performance felt less like a pop song and more like a public protest captured on tape. Some radio stations were hesitant to play it, fearing that such an openly political message might alienate listeners. But the public response told a different story.
It ain't nothing but a heartbreak.
The single surged up the Billboard Hot 100, eventually reaching number 1 in the United States and becoming one of the most powerful protest anthems of the era. In hindsight, War proved that sometimes the songs radio fears the most are the ones audiences need to hear. Because in 1970, that message wasn't just music. It was the sound of a generation speaking out. Number 1, Another Brick in the Wall, Part 2. Pink Floyd, 1979. By the end of the 1970s, Pink Floyd were already one of the biggest bands on the planet. But even by their standards, Another Brick in the Wall, Part 2, became something far bigger than anyone expected. Released in 1979 as part of the album The Wall, the song was written by bassist Roger Waters as a critique of rigid education systems and authoritarian control. The concept was simple, but powerful. children trapped in a system that discouraged individuality, creativity, and independent thinking. The chorus, sung by a group of schoolchildren, delivered the message with startling clarity. We don't need no education. For some radio programmers and educators, the line sounded dangerously rebellious. Critics argued that the song encouraged students to reject authority and dismiss schooling altogether. In several places, the reaction went even further. The track was banned in South Africa, where officials feared the song might fuel student protests during a period of growing unrest under apartheid. Ironically, the controversy only amplified the song's impact. Produced by Bob Ezrin, the track combined Pink Floyd's progressive rock atmosphere with an unexpected disco-influenced rhythm, making it unusually accessible for mainstream radio. And audiences responded immediately. The single climbed charts around the world, eventually reaching #1 in multiple countries, including the United States and the United Kingdom. What began as a protest embedded inside a conceptual rock album became one of the most recognizable songs of the decade. Looking back, Another Brick in the Wall, Part 2, proved something powerful about music in the late 20th century. Sometimes the songs that challenge authority the most are the ones that end up echoing the loudest across the world.